Hey guys, Cyber Soda, we're here. This is Joshua Davis, Zach Hill, Zach of all trades is here to deliver a conversation on security. All right, so we're going to talk today about passwords. I want to call this one Passwords Round 1 because passwords are forever in our lives. They're not going away. And so the question is, what do we do about them? So Zach, why don't you start us off with your thoughts on password managers, because I think they're stupid. Go right ahead, sir.
I mean, for the most part, I think they're stupid as well. However, I'm guilty because I often find myself using Google's password manager, which is built into Google Chrome, and then it syncs over to my phone, which makes my life like extremely easy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I love that. However, I feel like it's dumb, right? I know that it's stupid because this could potentially be victim of some vulnerability.
Well, okay, so come back to our what is it? Confidentiality. No, I can't. I'm screwed up. Do the triangle. What's the triangle?
The CIA one or the SCP?
Yeah, SCP. So what is it?
Security, confidentiality, privacy?
No, security, privacy, and convenience. So we're talking about convenience. Okay, so that's what these password managers do. And I would say I'm just as guilty. I don't have a password manager installed like on my desktop because the idea of having a single point of access to all of my creds is a little scary. But I would say for the most part, I have been guilty on my phone. I don't do it in browsers though. That feels uncomfortable. But I guess let's talk about like why do you think they're bad? I definitely have strong opinions, but your thoughts on that?
Why do I feel like they're bad? I feel like they're bound for vulnerabilities where somebody can then potentially access that one specific account. So let's bring up LastPass, for instance, right? Great password manager. Yeah. Everybody uses it. You hear about it all the time. If you were to, or if somebody were to access your LastPass account, then they potentially have access to all of the passwords within that LastPass account. Right?
I mean, dude, I'm just Googling here right now. There's articles in 2019 of there being vulnerabilities in LastPass. So absolutely.
And it's going to happen. It's bound to happen, right? I mean, it's just bound to happen. So that's a huge concern. Like that right there in itself is a huge concern. Just knowing like, okay, if I'm going to use this password manager and I get hacked, like now this person's going to have access to my bank account, my social media accounts, YouTube accounts.
All right. So coming back to password managers, there's a variety of sorts. So of course we talk about LastPass, did a little bit of Googling and finding that there's vulnerabilities for those. Also browsers and your phone, as we discussed too, is a form of a password manager. And I would say that I too use them occasionally. But I guess part of our concern we discussed is really there's that single point, right? That one place where the information is stored that someone could compromise. So, right. I mean, are we going to continue to use them out of convenience? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I
mean, I think the most vulnerable people are going to use password managers, right?
That's true.
It's not. I'm not trying to pick anybody apart. I mean, I know that there's professionals in the IT world who use password managers. They swear by them left and right. But the most vulnerable people are going to use password managers because those are typically the people who never remember their passwords.
So, okay, that's
on the other hand, like I remember my passwords. I don't have a problem with that. The reason why I use a password manager occasionally is because sometimes every time you go to, like you sign up for something, you get prompted, use this password. And it's like really complex password. And oftentimes it's a site that I might use very rarely.
Sure.
Manage that password. I don't care about it. Make it as complex as you possibly can. I'll never need to know it if I'm using this password manager. I'm not really going to have to worry about it too much because I know on those sites where I'm using that, I'm not going to be entering my credit card information, for instance.
Exactly.
I'm not going to be sharing very personal information. So password managers in that context work great for me. However, I don't save my password when I'm logging into my bank account, when I'm logging into my social media accounts. I never save my password for those because it just doesn't. That's
what I think the point is, right? The point is here, you want to be selective in using it because we recognize there is potential vulnerability. However, the convenience that we get out of it, right? I mean, if you log into, say, Rackspace, you're using Rackspace to manage some email accounts and you log into it every 6 months, it's probably fine to use a password manager for that. for my, we'll say Wachovia, because no one knows what that is anymore because it's no longer a bank in the U.S., but my Wachovia account, probably better for me to keep it up here instead of writing it down or putting someplace. And I think you are right, Zach. It's the people that take some of the security for granted, which is part of what this conversation is about. Yeah, so I'm going to come back to a question for you about how you remember your password. I'm not asking for any specifics, but I like that you said you remember your password. So do you have any kind of tips or thoughts on what you do to help you remember your passwords?
You know, it's funny that you asked me that because I've been asked that before because, you know, when I working in IT and getting phone calls every single day from people, hey, I forgot my password. Can you reset my password? I always wondered, like, how in the world do you forget your password? I just don't have any difficulty with that. Like, I can make my password like really complex and it makes sense to me, right? Like whatever combination that I'm using of numbers, letters, special characters, there's something about that just makes sense to me.
Really?
Well, because I'm creating a sequence with it.
Sure.
Sequence, right?
Yeah.
It's a sentence, it's a phrase, it's something. But I'm splashing in letters, special characters, and different things like that, which makes sense, you know? So think of like hacker talk, right? Like
exactly.
Instead of an A, I'm going to use a 4, right? And I'm not trying, I mean, this is a little bit too much information possibly, but I think people who really value their passwords, they do things like that. And if you're going to remember your passwords, you have it make as much sense to you as you possibly can. And utilizing, you know, numbers instead of characters.
Sure.
That's a great way to increase the strength of the password.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So part of what I was studying sort of this domain a bit, and one thing I realized is the length of your password has a lot to do with the security of it. So a lot of the brute force attempts at trying to crack a password, it's encrypted in various forms, the length is going to make it harder. So in most cases, you want to be 12 characters or more. And like you and I have discussed, 4 sentences are good. What I'm realizing too now is sprinkling in emojis that you could type, like not actually emoji characters because you can actually type it, but have fun with your password. So some tips that I would give and things that I use is I use context. So if I'm sitting, we'll say at my desk, I might use some element tied to where I'm sitting at as part of the password of where I would log in. Or I'm on a website and it's got a particular name or it's a particular type, like we'll say it's a bank or it's a gaming site. I might use the context to then adjust my password. So typically what I'll try to do is something of a combination of context with something that's motivating me. Like say I want to stop smoking, which I don't smoke. But if I did want to stop smoking, I could put in there, stop smoking, it will cause problems with your health. Smiley face, you know, something like that. And that right there will be a really hard password to crack unless you knew, that I wanted to quit smoking and that was a motivator. But yeah, stuff like that.
You bring up the password length, which is so valuable. And you know, people, then again, right, it's going to be even more like harder for them to remember a longer password. But I just kind of want to bring this up because I've discovered this the other day. And it really upset me. Like it bothered me to no end. And I was so frustrated by this. But the largest retailer in the entire world, right? They limit their password length to 12 characters.
Right.
Just that doesn't make sense to me.
Like Max, I know like Amex, which I don't want to say out loud, but Amex, and you can bleep it out, they for a while there had a limit too. Yeah. And what makes me angry is when they limit special characters because I have but no, you're right. I mean, that is, the length is everything in regards to time. I mean, time it takes a brute force. So I guess what you and I have kind of come to conclusions here, Zach, is password managers have their place. Mm-hmm. What we're probably thinking out loud is don't always assume that they're safe. Yep. Assume that at some point in time they could be compromised. And then therefore, things that are really important to you, don't store them in there. Your bank account? No.
I wouldn't.
Your Gmail account? Maybe. Probably not.
I wouldn't even store my Gmail account in there.
Well, because your Gmail gives you access to so many other things, right?
Your Gmail is tied to so much. And so think about, I forget what the terminology is used for this. And I was just was studying this for Security Plus, I think. I think this was brought up in there, but God, I wish I could think of it. Whatever. you can sign up for other websites using your Gmail account or your Facebook account, right? Or your LinkedIn account. It doesn't, you don't have to put in a password or anything, right? It just say, I'm going to sign up using my Facebook account.
Well, all it's really doing there is authentic, right? It's third-party authentication is what that is. So third-party authentication, and which to me scares me on a whole privacy level, because now I might be signing an, end user license agreement that's allowing this one company to have access to my Gmail stuff now, or vice versa. So
that's a whole nother ballgame, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But think about the fact if I get my Gmail account compromised.
Oh man, I mean, you could be owned.
Like I've personally, and I'll put this out there, I've used my Gmail account to sign up for other services.
Right.
Services I don't even probably care about, but
like burritos. Exactly.
Yeah, like burritos. Exactly. I don't care about password for that, because I'm not going to save my credit card to the burrito place.
Right.
I just want easy access, convenience.
Okay. So I think kind of the password, okay, we kind of wrapped up the password manager. I think a conversation here we talk about is almost like it's levels of risk that we're talking about of when you want to have a threshold of using a password manager. It's like maybe when it comes to a financial transaction that could compromise me and my family potentially, I don't want to use a password manager there, right? But something where I don't necessarily going to have a financial risk, maybe I do.
Convenient.
Right. So kind of shifting from there, one thing I did want to kind of go a little bit off topic, but I wanted to bring it up because it hit me. One thing we didn't talk about or have on our list to kind of review are the secret questions. So what's cool about the secret questions, if you forgot your password, might be able to get it. And I was thinking about that the other day, because one thing I don't do is ever answer the question. I answer it the way that I know I will answer it, which always makes me laugh, by the way. I do it to where every time I type it in, I'm like, that is ridiculous. Right. But I mean, your first dog, Zach, I got to Facebook and find out your first dog, or your mother's maiden name, or.
Yep. Those are the absolute worst. And it's unfortunate because I feel like there's not a lot of education around that.
That's right. And that's convenience too.
Right. Exactly. Definitely. And when you're asking, your mother's maiden name, right? That's the very last thing that you should be submitting to any third-party site or any website. Never submit that information. Right. Make something up. If it requires you have to use your mother's maiden name, make it up.
Yeah. To me, I don't know. Create a persona maybe that is like a character from a TV show like Seinfeld, and you're going to be George Costanza. And if I'm asked these secret questions, what will be George Costanza's answers, not Zach Hill? So it's layered security. We're talking about creating these layers between the thread and you. So I just want to bring that up because
that's a great thing to bring up because there's no education around that and on why
it's after the fact.
Right? Bad. It's bad. It's not good. It's not a good thing. Stop doing it.
It's bad. Yeah. So, okay, guys, I think the tips from Cyber Soda here is don't answer the security questions the way you would if it was you. Find something smarter. Or I don't know, answer it and add something on the end or add something in the front or I don't know.
And this goes back to what I brought up previously with the password managers, right? Like the people who are going to be compromised most easily are going to be the people who don't remember their passwords to begin with. So they use the third-party password managers. But also when they're answering questions like that, they're not going to answer it.
Right. It's a survey. I'm answering the truth. Yeah. And so kind of continue there. Let's talk about a little more of use. Convenience. So password managers, there's a time and a place. The reuse of passwords. I know all of us have been guilty of that. And as you discussed earlier, if you reuse a similar password, maybe not the same, similar password where it's hackable, like say when you're buying a burrito and my bank password is similar. And then something else to think about, Zach, when that's the case, username similarities too create opportunities for someone to attack.
Yeah, and now they're making that much more difficult because so many sites are requiring just your email address as a username.
That's true, which actually makes it easier for me to find you, right?
It makes it extremely easy. So when compromises happen, they leak some of that information. It shows your email, it shows your password. Well, now it makes things a little bit easier for attackers, right? But when you have that ability to create your own username, that is another layer where you can really kind of set that apart from other sites.
Absolutely.
You know,
absolutely. Now,
whether you're adding numbers and things to it or not,
sure,
it's still that creating more I can't even say that word right now.
Right. Anonymously.
Yeah, anonymously. Yeah. But yeah, it helps, you know, because there could be 12,000 Josh Davis
exactly
in the world, right? But now you're going to be Josh Davis 13. So which one's you? How do you tie that to you, right?
Exactly. And so that's something I want to kind of jump in here on is in security, we always create this mythical hacker. And typically it's some dude in a freaking hoodie. No, it's software. In a lot of cases, a whole bunch of little robots running these things over and over. Because one thing people that know how to write software do is to automate. And so it's not a hacker. It's a group of software doing the compromise, doing the brute forcing, and trying to attempt to get in.
You know, there's this common saying in IT that a good sysadmin is a lazy sysadmin.
Yeah.
Well, a good hacker is a lazy hacker.
Absolutely.
Because he automates or she automates everything.
Well, and at the end of
that's
the
the best
day,
way to do every job. But let's get real. But you know that they've crafted their art because it's an art. I mean, hacking is definitely an art, and if you don't see it that way, you should really kind of think about that process and what it takes to hack somebody, something, systems, and things like that. If you can automate that some of your process, it makes your life so easy.
Okay, so like
you're absolutely right that you know it's not a person necessarily that you have to worry about. It's these different bots and applications and things like that are doing all that legwork.
Well, so like look at it like my grandmother. She's participating in cyber war. She doesn't care about the password management and so on and so forth. And it's not that she's being targeted by an individual. She's being targeted just like the population is, because what a lot of hackers will do is create zombies that you can sell on the black market and do a whole lot of other stuff with. So this idea that you're being targeted, no, your vulnerabilities to the software you're using to your attack surface is being targeted. And if you get compromised, they own you. Now, granted, could you have someone that wants to hack you as a person? Sure.
Yeah.
They spend a lot of time and energy. You've pissed them off. It's a possibility, but that's much more rare than some automatic stuff out there on the internet. I mean, I know back 10 years ago, can't think of the patch of Windows, but we've put a certain patch version of Windows on the internet. Within 25 seconds, it was compromised. And it ain't by humans. It's by software. Right. So that's what's going to keep happening. So yeah, passwords. It's between you and being owned.
So this was today's episode of Cyber Soda, talking about passwords and password management, and passwords are just terrible in general. If you guys like this channel, make sure you guys subscribe and stay tuned for more.